Hello again, leaders. This is Dr. Eugene Dilan, the founder and CEO of the Dilan Consulting Group. And welcome to Safe to Speak, where every voice matters every time. Today, we're going to continue the conversation about psychological safety. Only today, we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into Dr. Timothy Clark's book, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. Now, before I go there, I want to point out that Dr. Clark spoke briefly in his book about the origins of this term, psychological safety. And that's important to know because it actually isn't a recent term. It's actually something that dates back, I think he said it was 1965. The idea of psychological safety was first talked about by 2 MIT professors, Dr. Ed Schein and Dr. Warren Bennis. And that's an important piece because, again, sometimes we think that things are new and that, again, it's the flavor of the month. I spoke about that last time. But this is actually something that's foundational to human beings. We all have a need within us, if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to connect with others. And so right in there, in that psychological need is the desire, again, to feel included and feel like we actually belong. So reminding you that last time we talked about Amy Edmondson's definition of psychological safety, which is really, again, this sense that you want to be able to feel that you can make mistakes, that you can challenge, that somehow you're not going to be put at risk of being shamed or made fun of or somehow be in any kind of jeopardy because you leaned in and you shared your thoughts and ideas. So Dr. Clark actually takes it a little bit further. And he really speaks to 4 developmental stages, and he breaks it down in terms of, I believe what he thinks is that you cannot get to the final stage of challenger safety unless you first felt included. But before I go there, I think it'd be interesting for you to understand some of the research that he was able to pull together in terms of making the case for psychological safety. And he cites some Harvard research dating back to 2013 that speaks to 48% of people who don't feel intentionally who don't feel psychologically safe intentionally reduce their work effort. 47% intentionally decrease the time spent at work because they don't feel safe at work, so why would they want to be there? 38% intentionally decrease the quality of their work. 80% lose time because they're worrying about whatever incident in which they were shamed. 63% lose work time because they're trying to avoid the person who shamed them. Again, I have a recent personal experience of this when I was at a networking event, and one of the hosts asked a question, and I stood up and spoke. And then rather than saying, no, I actually was looking for these people, this person proceeded to ask me questions that I felt made fun of me or somehow. My point is that since that time, I avoid that person. I'm like that. I didn't feel respected. So these statistics I'm sharing actually drive home the point that I'm trying to make again, is that psychological safety at the end of the day impacts your bottom line. Because again, if people don't commit to the organization or people end up leaving the job, you lose a lot of, I think, institutional knowledge. It just walks out the door. So with all of that as a frame, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about inclusion safety and what it means and what it looks like. So in terms of inclusion safety, I think the thing that's really important is that people want to feel accepted, seen, and they want to feel valued as human beings, regardless of what their role is, regardless of their background, regardless of the differences. And if you think about it, if you don't feel safe, you're never going to challenge. If you don't feel safe, you're going to worry about making mistakes. And so foundationally, this is one of the most important parts that you have to think about, because if you can accomplish this, it really, I think, bridges you into creating the kind of environment that will bring out the best in your people. So things that leaders can do. For starters, see if you can figure out a way to remember people's names and greet them by name. Acknowledge differences without making it awkward. Bring a mindset of openness in terms of how you interact with people, really kind of demonstrating a desire to get to know them on a deeper level than just what normal business or transactions might require. Be aware of the micro exclusions that happen during meetings. And what I mean by that, who are the people that you joke around with? Who are the people that always get pointed at so you could get their opinions in? At the end of the day, what we're trying to get to is a place where you begin to notice how you, in a lot of ways, may be excluding people. Because again, as I said in the last little video that I put out, what you do ultimately kind of sets that tone. And so that the thing to kind of keep in mind is that we can't expect people to contribute or challenge if they don't feel that they belong. Inclusion is kind of like the door to the rest of the house. And so again, things that you can do: invite people to share their thinking, their ideas, ask people to talk about their experiences and themselves, and create the space so that others can share, and also share some of your own vulnerabilities and faux pas, because all of that, again, begins to create an environment where other people feel safe as well. Now, learner safety is a little bit different, and that is really about people getting a sense that it's okay to experiment. It's okay to say, actually, I don't know. I've never done that before. It's giving people the safety to be vulnerable. And so one of the things you can begin to think about is, in terms of really understanding this at a visceral level, well, where are the places where you don't feel vulnerable? Because if you can, I think, put yourself into those situations as a reminder, it'll help you to think about what you can do so that others don't experience that in your meetings. And so, again, what's important here is that you want to get out of that surface level kind of conversation. Vulnerability requires people to have a little bit of trust and a little bit of vulnerability. So things that you can do: demonstrate that you don't have all the answers all the time. You know what? Actually, I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? That shows and normalizes for others. Normalize the giving and receiving of feedback. Normalize the norm or the idea that we're always trying to understand what can we try differently, or what can we learn from these mistakes. I would go as far as even saying that sometimes celebrating mistakes, it makes it more fun. Again, I can't think of all the inventors, who talk about that there are no mistakes, that every one of those mistakes actually led to further learning and more advancing of what they were trying to accomplish. But bottom line is this: as a leader, if you punish failure or you always have the answer, you shut down the learning. So your openness to both the mistakes and your openness to wait and wait to see what others' ideas are will set the tone in terms of inviting other people to contribute and again, make it safe for them. So from there, I guess what I would say is that learner safety is important in that I want to just build on it a little bit in terms of when you're learning. A lot of research basically points to that there's two parts to learning. One of them is the intellectual part, and the other part is the emotional part. And as a leader in an organization, your job is really, I think, to begin to disconnect failure and begin to disconnect mistakes from fear. If there's any fear connected to it, then think of the turtle who kind of pulls back into the shell. That's what you're going to get from your people. And so you really need to begin to disconnect again, fear from making mistakes. So I'm going to move on now and talk about contributor safety. So contributor safety, again, is really this idea of is it safe for me to bring my whole self, to share all of my strengths, to speak up in meetings, to share my ideas? Even I think really smart people can sometimes hold back in fear of judgment. Without contributor safety, teams get quiet. And actually what can happen is that sometimes you end up in groupthink because people aren't challenging each other, I think, to bring out the best ideas. So what can you do as a leader? I think you can make sure that everybody's contributing. You can ask people, what do you think? I haven't heard from you. What about you? What ideas, what experience have you got? Give credit to people in public so that people understand that you're valuing and recognizing their contributions, so that this is how they feel comfortable doing more of it. I would also say that assigning stretch work, giving people opportunities to go beyond the normal, signals that you trust them. Again, psychological safety isn't about protecting people from challenges. It's about creating the conditions where they seek them out and lean into them and rise to the occasion. And so those are some of the things that you can do in terms of contributor safety. And then lastly, what I would say in terms of challenger safety, what I have to say is that mostly this is really about creating an environment where people feel I can question what we've been doing around here, the status quo, without being afraid. You really are aiming to create an environment where people feel they can push back, they can challenge the group norms, they can propose change, even if it's to the authority. Because at the end of the day, innovation depends on healthy dissent. What you're trying to create is intellectual friction, and you're trying to reduce social friction. Again, I'm quoting Timothy Clark here again, but if you can create those two conditions where people feel safe enough and trust each other enough to really challenge each other, then the best ideas are going to come forward. Without challenger safety, you're going to get compliance, and when you have compliance, you don't have creativity. So what can you do? Invite dissent. What are we not seeing? Where could this go wrong? Get people to speak to those kinds of questions. Celebrate respectful challenge. And whatever you do, never penalize someone for speaking up, even when it's messy. You can always pull someone aside and kind of separate out the two things and say, hey, I really evaluated the challenge, and I would find it helpful if next time you were mindful of whatever. But my point is that the minute that you penalize someone, then that sends a message to everyone else as well. So just remember that if nobody's pushing back, then you're not leading a safe or innovative team. You're managing silences. So at the end of the day, what am I trying to get at here? I'm trying to get at that psychological safety in the context of Timothy Clark's 4 stages is really about inclusion, where you need to answer the question, do I belong? Learning, is this an environment where I can grow? And then contribution, can I add value? Will it be well received? And then step number 4, challenge, can I speak truth to power? And how will that be received? So with all of that, I want to come back to this and basically saying that that's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, please share your takeaways in the comments. Also, if you have questions or ideas for other episodes, please share them. And what I would say is please follow us on social media. Just search Dilan Consulting Group and you'll find us on every platform. And so until next time, please remember that business is human and every voice matters every time. See you soon.